Hello everyone, welcome to the ultimate guide to field mods in World of Tanks. Today I'm going to be showing you all the different combinations of field mods, from light tanks to medium tanks, heavies, TDs, and I'm not going to do artillery, I'm sorry, at tier 10. And the way I'm going to be organizing this is I'm going to start with lights, work my way to mediums, then heavies, and then TDs. And I'm going to break down each of the classes of tanks into their different roles. So for example, light tanks, you have versatile light tanks, then you have wheeled light tanks. For medium tanks, you have assault medium tanks, you have sniper medium tanks. So I'm going to be breaking everything down into their different classes, basically, their specializations. Now, as I go through this list, I'm occasionally going to provide exceptions to the different field mods. So let's just say we're looking at light tanks and we're looking at versatile light tanks. So I'll open up an example of a versatile light tank and I'll show you here which field mods you should pick. But occasionally there's a field mod which is good on most of the for example, versatile light tanks, but on one of them in particular, it's a bad field mod, and you want to pick the other one, for example. That's usually not the case. Usually field mods are pretty universal, so for most of the light tanks, all the field mods are going to be the same. But just keep that in mind. If you're interested in a specific tank, I might be covering that specific tank if it's an exception to the general rule. So without further ado, let's get started with the light tanks. And I'm sorry that I'm doing this on tanks.gg, it's just the most convenient way and most time efficient way that I thought I could do this. So it might not be the most appealing video for you guys, but hopefully you can use this as a reference whenever you're picking field mods in the future. So starting with light tanks, let's go over versatile light tanks first, using the Amex 13105 as an example. So for the first field mod, this one is debatable, but in general, you want to pick the top forward speed. And the reason why you do that is because most of the light tanks, most of the versatile light tanks, already reach their top speed pretty easily. And so they don't really need the extra engine power. And you almost certainly don't want to pick the -2 top forward speed, because then you're just limiting your top speed and you reach your top speed going downhill all the time or even on flat ground. So either pick none or pick the +2 top forward speed, and that's especially true of the light tanks with very high power to weight. So for example, this one has 37.5, so it easily reaches its top speed, so pick this. When it comes to this field mod, this one is another really tricky one. On basically every single light tank from this list, if you look at them, they basically all have bad accuracy. So this one, this one, this one. Manticore has like okay accuracy. This one has like below average accuracy. I think the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen is the only one with good accuracy, but you don't want to be worsening your accuracy, so don't do minus reload and plus aiming circle size. So either do none for this one, or do the smaller aiming circle size. And I know that's controversial because DPM is everything and whatnot, but especially on these autoloader ones where you have to make each of your shots count, I really like to do longer reload for smaller circle size. And for example, on the Sheridan, unless you're using an improved aiming unit, your accuracy is so bad that the better accuracy more than makes up for the worse reload. So on to the next one. This one is a kind of non-important field mod in my opinion. But basically, when it comes to this field mod, this one is one that will depend on which tank you're looking at. So what you need to look at when you're determining whether which of these field mods you should pick is look at the average, or I guess the typical reverse speed for the tank. So in World of Tanks, anything less than 25 reverse speed is not ideal. So if your light tank has less than 25 reverse speed, as the 13105 does, you should pick the field mod which increases your reverse speed. Now this plus 15% to HE shell and ramming damage. The plus 15% damage is only to non-penetrating HE shells. It doesn't add extra damage for fully penetrating HE shells, so it's not as big of a deal as it sounds. And unless you're in like an EBR ramming another EBR, the ramming damage doesn't really matter because you shouldn't be ramming people in light tanks anyways. And then the stun duration is like 8%, who really cares? And then a lot of people see minus 20% of protection of the crew from injuries, and they get really worried about that. They think their crew members are going to be dead all the time. Now, in my experience, it doesn't really make a big difference. And the reason why is essentially all of these light tanks are usually going to be 3-shot or maybe 4-shot. And so you get hit once, your crew member dies, you use your med kit. Now you're a 2-shot, so you can only take one. There's only one more opportunity for you to lose a crew member before you're dead anyways. So the chances that you lose your crew member twice in a row from 2 consecutive shots while your med kit is still on cooldown is very low. Now maybe you could argue for the Manticore you shouldn't pick this one because it only has 2 crew members, but I'm not actually sure if it makes a big difference. But yeah, just look at the reverse speed of your light tank and then figure it out from there. Anything lower than 25, pick the plus reverse speed. Alright, so next, picking the slot. This one, it really comes down to what equipment you have. Most of the time, on most light tanks, you're going to be using optics, maybe vents, CVS, and then maybe low noise, something like that for spotting setup. So you're probably not going to be using a turbo on most light tanks, so you probably aren't going to pick mobility. But you probably aren't using any other firepower slots either, except potentially a rammer. And so I would only pick this. Well, what you could do is have a secondary loadout, I guess, on all of your light tanks for city maps, where you can pick your firepower slot and then use a rammer and put it in your firepower slot. But if you have like bounty and bond turbo anyway, bounty and bond equipment anyways, then the slots don't really matter, to be honest. So it's up to you to just take into consideration your own circumstances with what equipment you have. Now when it comes to this field mod, this one is a very interesting one. Now in my opinion, on every single light tank in this list from the versatile light tanks, you should be picking plus camouflage. Now why do I say that? Because the worst view range on this list is the T100, and it has a 390 base view range. You're probably going to be running optics on it anyways, which will get you up to something like 480 view range if you have situational awareness and recon, I believe. Somewhere around there, maybe even higher, I'm not sure. But basically you have more than enough view range, but you can never, ever have too much camo. Because with 480 meters of view range, you're going to spot medium tanks at around 420 meters. You're going to spot all heavies at 445 meters. You're going to spot anybody who fires at 445 meters. The only thing that extra view range would really help with is spotting other light tanks in the open from like 350 meters or 330 meters away. So in my opinion, the camouflage is just more important, but it's still kind of personal preference. You could pick neither, or you could pick the view range. It's up to you, but I prefer camouflage. Now when we come to this thing, this one is kind of a no-brainer to me, in my opinion. You want to pick this one, minus 3% to concealment of enemy vehicles behind foliage. And that's because if the enemy's in the open, moving, so this is plus 3%, or this would be minus 3% to concealment of moving enemy vehicles. If they're moving and they're in the open, you're probably going to spot them anyway, unless they're another light tank. So it's just more important that you have the concealment behind foliage, because this is what allows you, with your CVS loadout, to outspot people through bushes without getting spotted in return. So I would always pick this one, in my opinion. I could be wrong about that, because I don't know all the mechanics behind it, but that's what I've always done, and that's what I think is best. Now let's quickly go over the EBR for wheeled vehicles. It has a lot of the same kind of field mods. Has the +2 forward speed, which you should take on the EBR. Take the plus forward speed. It reaches its top speed pretty quickly. It has this one. I pick the minus aiming circle size, but you could pick neither as well, but I would not pick the +3% aiming circle size, because then your accuracy is just really poor. I pick the reverse speed for this one because there's a lot of the time in the EBR where I'm driving backwards. This is up to you and what equipment you have, but you can't run turbo on this thing, so there's no real reason to pick a mobility slot. So probably a firepower slot. For this one, this field mod is the most important field mod on an EBR. And I see so many people get this wrong, even top level players I've seen, they pick this one, and this is a huge mistake. So this field mod decreases your internal module durability. It decreases decreases ramming damage caused and increase the ramming damage you receive. But then you get better reload for it. And the reload is really tempting, it is. But the problem with this field mod is it allows you to get set on fire. It allows your fuel tanks to be broken in a single hit from something like a TVP or an Object 140. So usually when an Object 140 or a TVP will shoot you, they have to shoot your fuel tanks and damage them twice before they set you on fire. With this, you'll get set on fire instantly, and also other EBRs will set you on fire instantly with one shot. And your chances of getting caught on fire just go up so much when your internal module durability is decreased. And then I believe it would also probably allow things like an IS-7 to one-hit your ammo rack. Could be wrong about that, but just don't pick this. So I would recommend leaving this on either neither picked. Yeah, I would just leave it on neither picked, because you don't really want to pick this one with the increased module durability, because sure, it will make it harder to damage your modules, but you don't want your reload to be increased 3%. Most tanks are going to, even with the increased module durability, they're still going to damage your modules. And you have a repair kit for a reason, so it's not a huge deal if your fuel tank gets damaged. You just don't want it to be destroyed is a big thing, because that's when you get set on fire. So the last one, this one's another tricky one. I pick this field mod, but it's for kind of similar reasons to what I've explained before. You get better protection. Okay, I misread that. I picked this one. So you can see enemy vehicles longer. But the crew injury, to me, it doesn't really matter, because like I said, this thing gets basically 3-shot, and the suspension repair speed, you only get, like I said, you're basically 3-shot. So if you get shot in the suspension, after using your repair kit once, you're basically down to a 2-shot anyway. So unless you get hit in the suspension 2 times consecutively, your repair speed really doesn't matter. Alright, let's move on to mediums now. This is taking longer than I was hoping. So let's start with assault medium tanks. So for the first field mod, module durability increase, I always pick this one. The one that increases your module, or I mean not increases your module durability, it decreases the penalty for ammo rack and your damaged engine by 50%. And especially for tanks that take a lot of module damage, like the E50M, the 907 gets ammo racked pretty often. The 430U I think it's, I'm not actually sure if its modules get damaged a ton. I know it gets set on fire a lot, but basically the 4% traverse speed for your hull and your gun doesn't really make a big difference, but the difference that it makes when you get ammo racked or engine is destroyed is huge. So that's why I basically always pick this. If you want to, you can pick neither, but I wouldn't pick this one. It's just, you basically become useless if you pick this one if any of your modules get destroyed. For the number 4 field mod, this is the first of many field mods that you'll see which have a very similar theme, where they trade off aiming time for fully aimed dispersion. So whenever you see something like improved sight, where it decreases the size of your aiming circle, you always want to pick the one that decreases the size of your aiming circle as opposed to the one that makes your dispersion better. Now, why do you do this? You'd think that on something like a KV2, that the aiming time, or I mean the dispersion, would be more important than the fully aimed circle size. But it's basically always the case that the fully aimed circle size is better. Not just because your fully aimed shots are more accurate, but also because of how the field mod actually works. So when it says -2% to the aiming circle size, that's not just when you're fully aimed. That's -2% to your circle size at all times. So including when you're moving. It works the same way as a improved aiming unit does, where even when you're swinging your gun side to side, your reticle at each given moment has a -2% penalty to it. So it's 2% smaller than it otherwise normally. It blooms up 2% less as you move. So it's basically better than this field mod in every single way. So always pick this one. It's one of the best field mods there are for any tank that has it available. Turbocharger tuning. This one is a tricky one, but it's not so tricky for a lot of tanks. So like I said, in World of Tanks, if you have less than 25 reverse speed, you're usually going to want to pick the field mod, which makes your reverse speed better. And that goes for all of these tanks here on this list, under the assault vehicles. All of these tanks, the reverse speed is way more important than the better camo you get. I don't know how to get this thing off. There. So always pick the reverse speed one if your reverse speed is less than 25. I think the only exception to that is like the STB one, but that's not even an assault medium. That's in a different category. But there are a couple exceptions. So for random battles, I would almost always pick the reverse speed just for brawling. But there are some exceptions, not for assault mediums, but for other types of mediums, as you'll see later, which get this field mod, you might want to pick the camo. And if you're in competitive, so you're playing, for example, like a 7v7 tournament, there are some situations where you want the extra concealment. So for example, on Murovanka and 7v7 tournaments, I sometimes pick the extra camouflage on my bat chat so I can sit on cap without getting lit. But for just pubs in general, you usually want the reverse speed. Alright, so now let's go on to the slot you want to pick. For all of these tanks here, the assault mediums, I would pick hardening, because you want one of your two loadouts on all of these tanks most likely to be hardening, especially for the E50M, because its fully aimed accuracy is already extremely good, and its accuracy on the move is very good, so you don't really need a V-stab or an improved aiming unit. And it also has a great HP pool, so you want a hardening loadout. And I would say you want a hardening loadout on all of these tanks, so that's what I would pick for the whatever the hell this thing's called. For this one is a no-brainer. So you get whoops, I picked the wrong one. You want to pick this one. You want the extra hit points in exchange for worse aiming speed. Now think about it like this. You have a gun lane drive, and you have hardening. Hardening, when it's boosted, gives you 10% better hit points. Gun lane drive, which is probably one of, if not... It's not the worst piece of equipment in the game, but it's one of the worst pieces of equipment in the game. When it's boosted, it gives you, like, I think 11.5%. We'll just round it to 12% aiming time. So basically, what you have here is a third of a GLD, of an unboosted GLD, and 1/4 of an unboosted hardening. So sure, you're getting less of a percent of a piece of equipment, but you're getting a much better piece of equipment. That's probably a really stupid way of explaining it, but maybe you understand what I'm trying to get at. Basically, the aiming speed is basically negligible. The hit points are not. The hit points are very important, especially in these tanks here, which are all good at brawling. Now for this one is another one which is pretty tricky. So you're exchanging view range. Let me see. I know that the main two that you're exchanging are engine power with view range, but let me just look at the other ones as well. So you get plus engine power, you get better dispersion, and you get better at ramming, but you get less view range. Now basically you can kind of ignore the gun traverse because it doesn't really matter, it's negligible. And then the ramming damage caused, I mean on an E50M it kind of matters, but let's be honest, what percent of your damage is going to be from ramming? Like 3%? Maybe less? It's not a huge deal. And then what's 8% of 3%? Like nothing. So what really matters is the engine power and the view range. On most tanks, I would pick the engine power, especially if you have a good crew with situational awareness and recon. But there are some exceptions. For example, if you just have a very poor crew and you want to max out your view range. So this is one field mod where you could really pick any. You could pick none, you could pick the left one, you could pick the right one. But in general, you're usually going to want the more engine power. But it's kind of up to you. Alright, sniper mediums. So the sniper mediums, just looking at them right away, it's a very diverse class. So you have like a rear mounted turret one, you have the Leopard, which is a great sniper. Then you have the CS63, which is, it's not really much of a sniper. Like it can kind of snipe, but it's nothing compared to the Leo. And then you have the 30B, which has like no penetration, and it's terrible at everything. So there's probably going to be some conflicting advice here for which field mod you should take, but I'll break it all down for you guys. So this is the same field mod as before. Like I said before, pick the field mod which reduces the nerfs that your tank gets for damaged modules. For this one, it's another one of those ones which makes you decide between dispersion and accuracy, I guess, fully aimed accuracy. Pick improved sight every single time on every single tank. Turbocharger tuning, look at the reverse speed. The reverse speed on the CS63 is god awful, it's only 15. So you should be picking, definitely on the CS63, pick the better reverse speed. I know camo is nice and all, but just let it go. You need that extra reverse speed. In fact, I run turbo on the CS63 on almost all maps, and it's basically solely for the reverse speed. When looking at these other tanks here, I'm not actually sure exactly what the reverse speed is for like the 30B, but I'll just give suggestions for the Leo. For the Leo, you can get away with picking neither because it has 23 reverse speed, which isn't terrible. But I would not pick the one which gives you extra camo, because then your reverse speed will only be 21, and that's too low. So either pick nothing on the Leo or pick the better reverse speed. Alright, next we have which slot to pick. Again, I would probably pick hardening because optics are overrated, and if you have a good crew, there's really no reason to ever use optics. And I don't know what else you'd be putting in your scouting slot unless, God forbid, you're using the Quickie Baby loadout with CVS, in which case, I don't know what to tell you. You have a massive brain. But for most of these, you should be picking a survivability slot. I have a hardening loadout on my CS63, which I sometimes use in pubs. You don't have to have a hardening loadout, in my opinion, in the CS, but it's nice. The Leo, you could arguably have a hardening loadout. K91, you probably won't, but I just don't see the point in having a scouting, whatever this is called, a scouting slot. It's just, what are you going to use it for, to be honest? This one is the hardest field mod to decide for the sniper mediums. Plus 5% to your aiming circle size, so your aiming circle size is bigger. And this is your fully aimed circle size, and your dispersion while moving is also 5% worse. But you get a better reload. Now this one is really tricky. On the CS63, personally, I pick neither of these. And the reason why I pick neither is the fully aimed accuracy when you pick the minus reload is just, it's too much. The only reason I would use this is if I'm using a loadout with a bounty improved aiming unit. If you use bounty improved aiming unit, then you can use this with the bigger circle size. If you're not using improved aiming unit, I would recommend picking neither for this. Now for basically all of the sniper medium tanks, I would not pick this one, which makes your aiming circle size even smaller. I just don't think that there's diminishing returns on how accurate you are. The difference between a Leo's accuracy and the Sturf's accuracy, even though the magnitude of the difference is pretty huge, it doesn't really make a huge difference because they're both so accurate that they can hit weak spots and lower plates pretty easily from basically any range. Obviously the extra accuracy does help, but in the majority of cases, especially against tanks that you can pen easily, the extra accuracy is going to do nothing, whereas the better reload will do something. So for the CS, pick neither or this, but if you pick this, do improved aiming unit. On the Leo is one where I think it is worth it to pick the minus reload. So on the Leo, I pick the better reload, but I use improved aiming unit on the Leo as well, just to help with this field mod, just to make your accuracy a little better. But the minus reload, what it also does is it allows you to shoot 2 for 1 against a lot of tanks, like against enemy medium tanks. So that's one of the advantages of using better reload. Now for the last one, this one is another no-brainer one. You want to pick the better engine power. The aiming speed, it's like half a GLD. GLD is one of the worst pieces of equipment in the game. This is like half a turbocharger, so why would you not pick that? Half a GLD versus half a turbocharger? I mean, I don't know. I know which one I'm picking. So I'd highly recommend pick the engine power on any of these. Even if you're already really fast, like in a CS63. Alright, are there any others? Yeah, there's support medium tanks. Let's go over these quick. These might be another one where there's a little bit of variance, and you can kind of pick and choose. But I'll try my best to summarize it. This one, module durability increase as before. I would pick this one, left side. Suspension arming, this one, it's the same as before. Pick improved sight. You want the smallest aiming circle size. Turbocharger tuning. This one, it's kind of difficult. So for the bat jet in particular, in some roles, or in some situations, you want to use it as a scout. Especially in competitive. So there's some situations where you might want the extra camo, but for pubs, since it has 23 reverse speed, I would pick probably neither of the two for the bat jet. For the Progetto, let's just quick check the reverse speeds. I don't actually know. It's 23, so same thing for the Progetto. You can pick neither or the extra reverse speed. For the TVP, you probably want to pick the better reverse speed because it only has 20 reverse speed. Alright, for these two, for the bat jet, I can see why you might want to pick a scouting slot if you want to use optics. This is like the one medium tank in the entire game where there's a chance you might want to use optics. Or you can also use low noise in this slot. I guess I kind of overlooked that. But it's really up to you what you want to do. In pubs, in the bat jet, I wouldn't even bother running a survivability slot or an optics slot, so for me personally, it doesn't really matter which of these I pick. And I would say the same for these other two. All of these are autoloaders, and I basically pick equipment which best improves their guns. I don't really pick hardening or anything to improve their view range. It's just not necessary, and it's not ideal. Now here are the two most interesting field mods. For this one, in pub matches, I pick neither on the bat jet. And I can see arguments for picking this one, where your aiming speed is better. Your reload is worse, but your aiming circle size after firing is better. So you don't have to wait as long between shots to fire. But this only really matters if you're not sitting still stationary, because if you're sitting still stationary, you're basically fully aimed after every single shot regardless. But a lot of the time in the bat jet, you're wiggling while you're shooting in between shots, or you have to move while shooting in between shots, so I can see why you would pick this. But personally, 5% reload time is just too big of a hit. So I pick neither. And I'd probably do the same on the TVP. And on the Progetto, I would probably also do the same. Now, there are a few situations where you might want to pick the better reload time. I would never do this for pubs. The only situation where I would ever pick this on a bat jet, or possibly a TVP, is in competitive game modes where you have to be loaded as soon as you first engage the enemies at the start of the battle. So for example, on Cliff, there's some situations where good teams in competitive game modes where there's no reward tanks, where they'll pick this field mod in the bat jet so that they can shoot as soon as they're loaded in the beginning of the battle. But besides that, it's irrelevant. You should just pick neither for both, in my opinion. This one's another trade-off one. You get better top forward speed and engine power, and you lose view range. On the bat jet, this is really just up to you. Personally, I pick the better forward speed and engine power, unless I'm playing competitive and I need the extra view range for some reason. But for pub matches, I just pick the better speed. I would probably do the same for the other two. But it's really up to you, to be honest, for that field mod. Alright, heavies. So it appears that I have forgotten to do the versatile medium tanks. So let me go over those really quickly. Tier 10. We'll use the STV1 as an example. So as with the other medium tanks that I've already mentioned, I go with a module durability increase. I go with improved sight because you want the fully aimed accuracy. Turbocharger tuning. This one depends on the tank. So the STB is 25 reverse speed. So I would actually pick nothing on the STB because its reverse speed is already so good that the 3% extra camo is nice to have. But I probably wouldn't reduce the reverse speed because then you get to 23, which is still very good, but I don't think it's worth the extra camo, to be honest, on an STB. When we look at the other versatile medium tanks, to be honest, I don't think you're going to need camo in a 121 in M60. Maybe in the 140 you would want to pick neither, but on the 121 and the M60 I'd probably pick reverse speed. But maybe at 140 and T62A you might want to run neutral, so no camo, no reverse speed, because they have like 20 reverse speed, which I don't know, it's good enough. It's really kind of up to you, but I wouldn't pick plus camo on like any of these because then your reverse speed is just too low. Alright, so the next one, scouting and survivability. Most of these tanks you're probably going to want a survivability slot. Well, it's kind of personal preference. Personally, I don't run a survivability slot on the STV1. I just don't think it's necessary, but like on the M60, your gun handling is already so good that you can run hardening, vents, and rammer, for example. Same thing with the 140. So that's kind of up to you, what you want, but optics are overrated in today's meta, and you probably don't want to put low noise on any of these tanks, so you're most likely just going to pick the survivability slot regardless. Heavy gauge nozzles. This one is just a straight up trade-off, so you get +2 to forward speed and then -3% to view range. Some of these tanks, like the M60 and STB1, have over 400 base view range. So losing the view range is not really a big deal because you're still going to end up with like 460 plus view range, even with the minus view range. So you could pick the top forward speed. That's probably what I would do for most of these. But you could also just pick neither if you want the extra view range. It's really just up to you. And then for this last one, I would pick the increased suspension durability. Because, well, your suspension durability is not going to be very high to begin with because you're a medium tank, not a heavy. It can still prevent you from getting tracked by something like a 140 or some low caliber gun, or maybe you get shot by a tier 8 medium tank. And the extra suspension durability is nice for those kind of situations, and also improves your suspension repair speed. Actually, no, it doesn't. It makes it worse. Man, the way they word these things is kind of confusing, I'm not gonna lie. And the fact that they put the buff in between two nerfs, like why would they not just, I'm not even going to talk about it. Anyway, yeah, that's it for versatile mediums. I don't think I missed anything else in the video. I made this segment at the very end of the video because I realized I missed it. So yeah, let's move on to the next section, which I believe is heavies. Alright, so I have made a mistake. I'm not going to explain what I did wrong. I'm just going to move on. Basically, I went over a part and I realized I made a mistake, so I'm redoing it. So, onto the heavy tanks. Let's start with assault heavy tanks. These are your heavy boys. Let's take a look at the E100. So the first field mod, all-terrain suspension. This field mod is common to every single heavy tank. So I'm going to show you an example using the IS-7. I know it's not an assault heavy tank, but it's the same field mod, so it'll still prove my point. Basically, you always want to pick all-terrain suspension. For pub battles, anyway. Why should you always pick this one? You might think, but it reduces your hull traverse speed. Well, it actually really doesn't, and I'll explain why in a second. So let's look at the other parts first. So picking this will make your suspension durability 10% worse, and compared to picking this one, it's a 20% difference. So your tracks will be 20% weaker, basically. However, heavy tanks, basically every single heavy tank on the list, you should have a hardening loadout, and that's the one you should be using most of the time, for the most part, especially on the faster heavies. And so even with reducing your track health, because you have hardening on your loadout, or at least you should most of the time, you still won't get tracked, or at least tracked in one shot, from things like 140s, and a 50B only has a % chance to knock off your track. So like 400 alpha guns might take out your track, maybe not. The only real difference it makes is when something like an IS-7 shoots you, like an opponent IS-7, because then it's a little bit more likely that your track will go off. But it's not a huge deal, really. What is a huge deal is this plus 7% to maintaining speed when crossing all terrain types. Basically, what that's saying is it makes your terrain resistances better, and terrain resistances are hidden values which affect your effective traverse, your effective top speed, your power to weight, all that shit. So let me just compare the two. So this makes all this stuff better, right? Having better terrain resistances. Let's just see how much of a difference it makes. So effective top speed, I picked the one that's worst for terrain resistance. 49, 35, 56, 41, 20, 23.5. Makes a massive difference. Like, the top speed on hard terrain goes up by, like, I think, what is it, like 9 or like 8? Maybe 7? I don't know. 7 or 8. Oh, I think I just had an aneurysm. Okay, it's fine. Now look at the traverse speed. So you might have noticed, okay, sure, maybe your top speed is better, but your hull traverse speed should be worse, because this one makes your hull traverse speed worse, right? Well, it actually doesn't, and the reason why is terrain resistances also affect your effective traverse speed. So even though this one has better hull traverse speed as a bonus, it goes from 29.1 and 21 to 30 and 22. So your traverse speed actually gets better, even though you're picking the field mod, which is supposed to decrease your hull traverse speed. So that's why you should always pick this one, because the hull traverse speed, you can basically just ignore that. It doesn't exist. It doesn't decrease your hull traverse speed, and it just decreases your suspension durability a little bit, but massively increases how quickly you can cross terrain, basically. Now, it does depend a little bit on the terrain resistances of your vehicle. The worse they are, the bigger benefit you'll get from this, but I'd still say it's worth taking on every single heavy tank. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Parallax adjustment, this is the same as on the medium tanks. Well, it's similar. You're basically getting worse aiming speed, but your fully aimed accuracy and your dispersion on the move is 3% better, so always pick parallax adjustment on every single heavy tank. This one, sound insulation. This one is personal preference, although personally I like to go for the plus view range one, because your max view range, if you don't run optics on your heavy tanks, which you shouldn't be, if you have base 400 view range, is 468. And with 468 view range, which you can only get with this field mod, you can spot medium tanks at like 430 meters, 440 meters a lot easier. Whereas if you pick this one, your view range can get down to like 440, where you don't even have max view range, and you won't even spot an E100 at 445 meters. So I like to spot for myself, and I play for combined damage, so I usually pick this one because I don't really find that the 30% additional stun duration and the the 20% additional stun duration, and then the 30% additional stun duration, like when 2 arties hit you. I don't find it to be a really big factor. But if you're playing in mouse and you don't want to be pissed off by arty, then I fully understand why you would just pick this one. It's just not what I prefer. So yeah, it's up to you. When it comes to which equipment to improve, I would go with mobility slot, because every single one of these tanks benefits from a turbo loadout, because their top speeds are limited, especially the mouse. The mouse's top speed, you basically get, it basically just improves your top speed a little bit, which is very important, because as a percent bonus of your top speed, it makes a big difference. So for example, if your mouse is going 20 kilometers per hour and your turbo mobility slot boosted up one more, so you get to like 21 or whatever, I know those aren't the actual values, then you just gained 5% speed. Whereas in a CS63, if you boost your speed by 1 kilometer per hour, that's only a 1/70. It's only like 1.5% bonus. This is like a 5% bonus, so you get more bang for your buck on heavy tanks with turbo loadouts. So that's why I'd pick mobility slot, but again, it depends on what equipment you have. So if you don't have any bond or bounty equipment, and you want to boost your rammer, for example, because you only have a regular rammer, then by all means pick the firepower slot, but just keep in mind what kind of equipment you have and what kind of loadouts you want. When it comes to this one, I would pick the top forward speed. The HE shell, the extra HE shell damage doesn't really matter because it only applies to non-penning HE shells anyway. The ramming damage, if you're in an IS-7, wait, is this your HE shell damage? I'm not actually sure. I think it's HE shell damage to you, but I could be wrong. Either way, you can ignore all the other stuff, probably. Like, the hull traverse speed is nice, and then you have the top forward speed. And the top forward speed, especially for these boys here, which have terrible top speeds, and they're limited by their top speeds, you want the extra 2 top forward speed. And the protection of crew from injuries, for some reason, I don't know the exact mechanics behind how this works. Like, is it 20% more likely that you're gonna get hit, that your crew member's gonna get hit, or is that like an added bonus? Like, literally, if you previously had a 20% chance that they hit your crew member, then they just stack on an extra 20%, so it's up to 40%? Or is it like there's a 20% chance to hit it, so you take 20% of 20, so you get 24%? I don't know exactly how it works, but just in my personal experience, I haven't had any major problems with too many crew members getting injured. So it's not really a factor that I take into account when picking these field mods. And then 8% to stun duration, honestly, it's not a big deal. It's 8%. It's like nothing. So I would always pick this one. This last one, this one is another one of those field mods, probably the most important field mod in the game, along with the one I showed you on the EBR. The reason why this one is so damn important, if you pick this one here, you're in for a terrible experience. Minus 30% to internal module durability. This means that tanks will be one-hitting your ammo rack, so you'll just explode, getting hit by an IS-7 in a singular shot. They'll one-hit your fuel tank, so you get set on fire in one shot. They'll destroy your engine in one shot. Basically everything there is to imagine. It's just terrible. Do not pick this, ever, on any tank. So either pick neither, or what I would like is pick this one. Because you get the better internal module durability, and heavy tanks already have pretty high module durability in general. It makes it very hard to destroy your engine, to destroy your ammo rack, all that good stuff. And you get better repair speed, which actually matters on heavy tanks somewhat. The gun traverse speed, as I talked about, actually I'm not sure if I talked about it earlier because that might have been in the segment that I deleted, so I'll quickly go over it again. Minus 5% to gun traverse speed. Now you might think that means that you turn your turret 5% slower, but notice how it says gun traverse speed and not turret traverse speed? That's because, according to what I've heard anyways, there's two different things. There's your turret traverse speed, which moves your gun side to side, and then gun traverse speed, all that's responsible for on a turreted tank is moving your gun up and down. Because when you move your gun side to side, your gun's not actually moving at all, it's your turret that's moving. But when you move your gun up and down, it actually is your gun that's moving. So minus 5% to gun traverse speed doesn't really matter because it's just how quickly you move your gun up and down, which who cares. Now take that with a grain of salt because I heard that from somebody, I don't remember who, but I'm pretty sure it's true. So yeah, I'd recommend this one, or neither, but most likely this one. Alright, let's go on to breakthrough heavy tanks. I'll just go with the i7. They're all pretty similar, except the 60 TP. I have no idea why that's not an assault heavy tank. All-terrain suspension, pick this one as explained before. Parallax adjustment as explained before. This one, up to you as explained before. I picked this one. Mobility slot is what I'd recommend for all of these tanks because they all benefit from a turbo loadout in my opinion. But like I said, it depends on what equipment you have. I always pick this one, the plus 4 kilometers per hour to top forward speed, because losing some aiming speed, it's only half a GLD's worth, which is not a lot. And as explained a second ago, the gun traverse speed is just how quickly your gun moves up and down, so that's completely pointless. You can basically just delete that from the equation, it doesn't matter. But the top forward speed does matter, because when you're going downhill especially, you're oftentimes going to reach your top speed, and if you're in a tank like the Object 279E, which is limited by its top speed even on flat ground, this plus 4 makes a huge difference. Now it's not going to make a huge difference in the IS-7 too often, unless you're running a full mobility loadout, because it won't reach its top speed most of the time. But the nerf to your aiming speed is so negligible that I always pick the top forward speed anyways. Reinforced platform. I can't remember if I went over this. Let me check the E100 real quick. I need to actually just make sure. I don't think this is a thing. Yeah, it's not. I have to go over it again. I had to repeat part of the video, so I'm kind of confused. For this one, I always pick the plus hit points. Now this is debatable. The reason I always pick plus hit points is mostly just because basically all of these heavies here I use in competitive, the 113, 60 TP, IS-7, 277, 279E, all them. And it's basically the consensus in competitive game modes that you always go with the plus HP field mod for this reinforced platform one. However, if you don't play competitive at all, you don't have to pick the plus HP. It's down to personal preference at that point. But you'll want to consider the dispersion factor, the dispersion factors of the tank that you're choosing. So for example, the IS-7 has terrible dispersion factors when on the move. So maybe you want to pick the minus dispersion on hull traverse and movement just to make these better. In my opinion, it's not worth it. The HP would be better. But if you're gonna pick this one, then the i7 would be a good tank to do it with because its dispersion factors are terrible. Now compare that to something like a 279E. Okay, never mind. The 279E's dispersion factors are worse than an i7. Did not see that coming. Maybe I don't even have an example. I hope I can find one. Oh, I can't find an example. Either way, look at the dispersion factors of your tank before deciding which one to choose if you're just playing in pubs. And if your dispersion factors are really bad, then you should be more likely to pick this one. If your dispersion factors are fine, then pick the plus HP one. Alright, support heavy tanks. This is where it gets interesting. We got 50B, Kron, Rhino, all the autoloader ones. Plus they just randomly threw in the 2 and 5B. What the hell? You know what, whatever. I'm not gonna question it. So, all-terrain suspension as usual, parallax adjustment as usual, plus view range is my personal preference. You're not going to be getting hit by arty in a 50B very often, so just go with the plus view range. On the Kron, then it's up to you. I like going with mobility slot for all of these tanks because I like one loadout with a turbo, especially on the T57 heavy because its reverse speed is terrible. Now we get to the interesting field mods. So focus on mobility. I would always pick the minus reload time on the 50B, the Kron, the Rhino. T57 Heavy is the only one where it's kind of questionable because its reverse speed is 12, which is god-awful. On the 57 Heavy, you could pick the better reverse speed, or just pick neither. But on the Kron and the 50B, okay, maybe on this one too, you could also pick the better reverse speed, or pick neither. I'd probably just pick neither. Well, I don't know. To be honest, I'd probably pick the better reload because I'm a damage whore. But on the Kron and 50B, definitely pick the better reload. Because even though your reverse speed isn't great at 17, when you get this field mod, it knocks it down to 17. What do? You just throw on a turbo. Let me do this. Okay, I can't. That's annoying. 1 second. Throw on a turbo. Now your reverse speed is back up to 20 again, which is good enough. I mean, it's not great, but it's good enough. And you get 3% better reload time. So a lot of the time in a 50B, you're gonna have a setup like this. You're gonna have HP. Where the hell is it? Vents. Then V-stab. You can switch the HP with improved aiming unit or rotation mechanism or whatever. It doesn't matter for this example. Now vents, surprisingly enough, if it's bond vents, it gives you around 3.25, I think it is, % better reload. So what you can do is replace the vents. If you're worried about your reverse speed, just replace the vents with turbo and then pick this field mod. This will decrease your reload as much as vents do, 3%. So you basically just got extra speed while maintaining the same reload that you did with vents by picking this field mod. I don't know, maybe that makes sense to you, maybe it doesn't, but that's my rationalization for why it's fine to pick this field mod, because you can just pick turbo and it makes up for the vents. Last one, I would definitely pick this one, 100%. First of all, these are autoloaders, the Kron and 50B. So the minus 15% to aiming circle size after firing makes a big difference. You get plus 2% vehicle hit points as well, which is great. And yes, your aiming speed is worse, but the 15% to aiming circle size, in my opinion, is a bigger bonus than the worse aiming speed. Especially when you throw on the extra vehicle hit points, it's just, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. You should pick that every time. I'm curious, does a 2 and 5B actually get the same field mods? Because that's kind of weird. Like, why does it get... Like, this isn't even an autoloader, and it gets minus 15% to the aiming circle after firing. Like, it literally does nothing. Like, what's the point? It's whatever. Alright, let's check this shit. Versatile. Versatile heavies. Let's check this out. So, all-terrain suspension, parallax adjustment. This one, up to you. I do mobility. Here. Gun traverse speed versus top reverse speed. Always pick the top reverse speed. Not only because most of these heavies don't have more than 20, well, all of these heavies don't have more than 25 reverse speed, which is kind of the sweet spot for reverse speed. But also because, like I explained earlier, gun traverse speed is not your turret traverse speed, it's just how quickly your gun goes up and down. So you're basically losing nothing and you're getting 2 reverse speeds, so just take it. This one is kind of just a throwaway one, like it really doesn't matter, to be honest. Yeah, it's really just up to you. I would probably pick this one, but like, it really doesn't matter. In tanks that have bad dispersion, which only really the Chieftain out of all of these, and maybe this thing with the big gun, I've never played it, so I'm not actually sure. Then you would probably want to pick this one on the right for better dispersion during hull and during hull traverse and hull movement. But it really doesn't matter, just pick whichever one you think is better. Alright, TDs. Assault TDs. Let's go with the E3. Now there's some interesting field mods for Assault TDs. So first of all, reinforced suspension. Always pick this one on every single one that offers it. And the reason why, okay, you get worse hull traverse speed, but like I said, what's it called? Let me put a turbo on this, by the way. I think it will make the... Yeah. Hang on. Might need a bond turbo. The problem is the top speed is limiting it, so I can't show you the benefit of having whatever the hell it's called, this field mod. Yeah, that's better. So you get worse hull traverse speed, and on this tank it actually does make a difference. So tank traverse 26, and then it goes all the way down to 24, which is a pretty big hit. It's like 10%, what I'm pretty sure. Actually, no, it's not. It's less than that, I think. Yeah. But if you look at the effective top speed, here you got 15 on soft and 26 on medium, 15 to 26. Then you get 20 to 30. Makes a massive difference to your effective top speed. Oh, wait a second. Okay, never mind. What the hell is this? Okay, I guess this is just general traverse speed. Okay, disregard what I said before. Your traverse speed is better with this first field mod. So look here, this is the plus 5% to hull traverse speed. So yay, fast traverse speed. Click here. Holy shit. Goes from 24 to 29. So much faster on hard terrain. Medium terrain 21 to 26. Like, these are massive differences. Like 21 to 26, that's like 20 or 25. It's like 20% faster. It's ridiculous. Like, imagine turning 25% faster. That's faster than a rotation mechanism makes you turn. Like, and that's just from this one field mod. So yeah, 100% always pick this, and it has the added bonus of plus 30% to your suspension durability. There's literally no downside. Always pick this. Aiming gears, this is another one like you have on the medium tanks and heavy tanks. Always pick the minus aiming circle size, parallax adjustment. Ejector tuning. Now let me explain this one. This is the freest field mod you've ever seen ever. So let's click this. always pick the plus view range one. Now why? Why? Minus 6% concealment? That doesn't sound good. I'm a tank destroyer. I want to stay unspotted. Well, it's only minus 6% concealment after firing, and it's not a flat nerf to your concealment. Like, it's not just a flat percent. It's not a absolute value, just like minus 6, so you go from like 10% camo to 4%. It's taking 6% of your remaining camouflage and then deducting it. So if you have 10% camouflage left after firing, it's going to take 6% of that, which is 0.6, and then you're going to go from 10% camo to 9.4%. It literally makes no difference to your camo. It's kind of hilarious. So like, look at these camo values. Stationary while moving, stationary and moving. Boop. Oh no, I go from 1.27, or I go from 1.43 to 1.27. Oh, so I went from 0 camouflage to 0. That's great. Literally makes no difference. You basically just get free view range from this. For this slot, I would pick survivability unless you're in like a stirve and you want to use binos, which I wouldn't recommend. I'd use optics instead, but for something like an... Oh wait, the stirve isn't even in this class of tanks, so never mind. All of these, you probably want a hardening loadout, like Badger, Yag, V4, E3. Probably not the E4, but maybe. So yeah, I'd probably go with hardening, and then this one is a tricky one. You lose hit points, but get better reload. I just ignore the protection of the crew from injuries because honestly I don't notice a difference on any of those. This one is really down to you, I think. I usually pick the better reload, for pubs anyway. There's some situations in competitive where you want the extra HP even though your reload's worse. Like for example, if you pick extra HP on an E3 and then add bond hardening. Where's my HP? Voila, now you have 2400 HP, and if you're playing against an enemy T110 E3, now you're a 4-shot instead of a 3-shot. But besides that, besides competitive, for pub matches, it's really... Okay, my headset just died, so I'm back now though. And I also realized that my music hasn't been playing for probably the whole video, so sorry about that. But you're just gonna have to deal with it. Whatever. So as I was saying, this is down to personal preference. For pub matches, I would say if you're a really good player, I would go with the minus reload. If you're a pretty bad player, I would go with probably the plus HP, or just neither. Now why would I say that? Well, it just makes sense, because if you're a really good player, your survival rating will be higher, and the HP will be less useful to you. If you're a really bad player, and your survival rating is like 20%, you might be using that extra HP like every single battle, so that's my rationality behind that. Repairable tracks, this one, it's kind of a hard choice, but not really. I would go with the plus reverse speed. Yes, your engine power is worse, which really sucks, but these TDs have terrible reverse speeds, and it really just makes them so much worse. Like the E4 its reverse speed is like, what even is it? It's 10. It's garbage. So just go for the better reverse speed, in my opinion. Even though it kind of sucks you lose engine power, it's just, you have to deal with it. Sniper TDs. Alright, we got the Stirve, the Grill, and the SP2. Reinforced suspension, as before. Parallax adjustment. Right angle periscope, as I explained before. These ones, I wouldn't use a HP loadout on the Grill. Maybe you could use an HP loadout on the SP2, but I probably wouldn't. I usually run vents, turbo, rammer. Stirve is the only one where you could potentially run a HP loadout, but I know that sounds really weird, but honestly it's the only one that I would, but I hardly would ever use it, so it's really just up to you. Depends on what equipment you want to use. Loading mechanism tuning. Now the grill, the SP2, and the stirve have extremely good accuracy, like the best in the game basically. So, unlike with the sniper medium tanks, like the CS63, I would get the minus reload, the better reload on all three of these tanks, because first of all, there's a good chance that on the grill you're going to be using an aiming unit, and possibly on the SP2. Or vents on the SP2, which makes its accuracy better. Probably vents on the stirve as well, which makes its accuracy better, but the stirve's accuracy is already just impeccably good. So your accuracy is already good enough. You might as well sacrifice a little bit of accuracy for the better reload, in my opinion. PTO tuning. This one's another no-brainer to me. Pick the engine power. Minus 3% to aiming speed, you're literally not even going to tell the difference. Alright, support tank destroyers. This is an odd bunch, so I might have to look at these individually a little bit. So reinforced suspension, parallax, this thing. Whatever's up to you. Probably wouldn't use hardening on like basically any of these, to be honest. I mean, you could make an argument for the Foshes, but meh, it's up to you. New aiming gears. So this one is tank dependent. Basically with this one you get minus 15% to aiming circle size after firing. For single shot tanks, that makes literally no difference whatsoever, because there's like 30 seconds between your reload anyway, or 25 seconds. So you can basically take that out of the equation for the 4005, 183. Yeah, those two. For these ones, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference for the Foch 155 either, because it has 5 seconds between shots, so it's gonna have time to fully aim anyways. The only one it makes a difference for is the Foch B, because the Foch B has a very small intraclip reload. So on the Foch B, you might want to pick this one for the better aiming circle size after firing, but it will impact your reload time. So personally, I think on my Foch I pick neither, because I run all gun handling equipment on it anyways, so I basically am fully aimed in between all of my shots anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Now on the 4005, I pick the minus reload. I don't understand whether it's minus 4% to aiming speed. I think that's a nerf. So this plus 4% to aiming speed, that means you aim faster, right? But that doesn't really make sense, because it's listed above plus 3% reload time, which is a nerf. So maybe it is a nerf. I don't really understand, to be honest, the aiming speed part. But regardless of the aiming speed, whether it's a buff or a nerf, minus 3% to reload time is a big deal. So regardless of whether my aiming speed is better or not, I'd pick the better reload anyways. Even though the 4005's aiming speed is pretty bad, but still, minus 3% reload is hard to pass up. This one, I'd probably pick the reverse speed on the 4005, because it's only 8 without this field mod, which is terrible. And there's so many situations where I'm poking around a corner, I shoot, and then it just takes me like 5 seconds to get back into cover and I die. So the reverse speed, sure, you lose 3% of your health, and if you were to pick this one you get 6% of your health, but then your reverse speed is 6, which is unplayable. So I would go with the higher reverse speed. For the Foch B, it's a little bit harder to say, to be honest. It's got 13. This one's got 13. A lot of the time in the Foch B and the 155, you're kind of committing into a fight and you're expecting to kill whatever's in front of you, so then it doesn't really matter that you don't really have to pull back into cover after you engage them. So I'd say it's kind of up to you. I don't actually know what I use. I think I used neither on my Foch B. I don't have a Foch 155, but yeah, that's all I can really say about that, to be honest. Versatile, 268. Yeah, versatile my fucking ass. This thing is a pile of shit. I've never actually played it, I shouldn't be so harsh. This, whatever you want. This one, 5% to concealment and top reverse speed. I've never actually seen this field mod because I don't have a 268 and it's the only one in this category. It's 15 reverse speed. This one is a tough one. This one is really tough. Cause 5% camo, that's just a base straight up 5%. It just adds 5%. It's not like a 5% of how much camo you already have. It just straight up adds 5%, like the absolute amount, which is a shit ton of camo. Like the difference between this is 11% when stationary and 21. It literally doubles your camo. This is without a camo crew though. Realistically, you probably shouldn't pick plus 5% concealment because 13 reverse speed is pretty bad. Unless you're using turbo, which I probably wouldn't on this. I mean, I don't know, maybe you would. I've never played this tank, so I can't really say. I don't know, this one kind of stumps me. Just pick whichever one you think is better. I can't tell you, I can't give you advice for that one. This one, another hard one. What the hell are they doing? Why are they giving us such complicated field mods, bro? I don't fucking know what to pick. I probably wouldn't pick this, because 44 top speed is pretty shit. I would probably pick neither or this one. I would probably pick neither. I don't think you need 52 top speed. You're probably not going to reach it anyway. So I'd probably pick neither, but that's just a guess. There's no wheel, no SPG. Yeah, I think that's it actually. So yeah, this was probably the most boring video on the entire internet. However, if you're looking for field mods for your tier 10 tanks, or even for your tier 8 or tier 9 tanks or whatever, hopefully this video was helpful to you. So yeah, please like and subscribe if you found this useful to you or whatever. Please share it with your friends and your clanmates if you find them putting plus reverse speed on their cron instead of the better reload. Send them to this video, put them in their place. Alright, that's all I've got to say. See you guys later. Goodbye.